I never thought a storm could lead me back to the living room until I froze when I saw a handprint on the glass. No one else was in the house. This is Mr. H. You're listening to Masked Horror. The knock came after midnight. It was around 12:40 a.m. when I first heard it. A slow, dull knock at the front door. Not a doorbell, not pounding, just 3 soft knocks. Then nothing. I was alone at my parents' place, house sitting while they were visiting family in Florida. They eventually moved to Florida, but this is when they used to live in the Northeast. They lived pretty far out, edge of town, wooded property, the kind of house where when it rains, it sounds like the whole place is sinking. And that night, it was pouring. One of those storms that turns everything black outside. At first, I told myself it was just the wind knocking a loose branch against the porch. But about 5 minutes later, there it was again. Knock, knock, knock. Same rhythm, slow, even, like someone trying to be heard but not seen. I muted the TV and stood up. The power flickered, and for a second, everything dimmed to a sickly blue. No thunder, just the sound of rain hammering the windows. I went to the front hallway and stood there for a second, not moving. I don't know why, but I didn't look through the peephole right away. I just stood with my hand on the deadbolt, holding my breath like some part of me knew it was a mistake to open the door. Eventually, I forced myself to look. Nothing. Just the dark, wet blur of the porch light catching the rain. The driveway was empty. No cars. No figures. The motion sensor light didn't even come on. Still, I told myself it had to be nothing. Maybe an animal. Maybe just storm noise bouncing weird off the porch. I went back to the couch, pressed play, and tried to forget it. That worked. For maybe 15 minutes or so. Then I heard it again. But this time, it was coming from the back door. I froze. The back of the house opens onto a fenced-in yard, and there's no gate access from the outside. You'd have to go around the entire house in full view of the living room window to get there. I hadn't heard anything move through the yard. This time, I crept to the back door with every light off. My phone in one hand, the other gripping the handle of the fire poker I'd pulled from the fireplace. I looked out the small window above the sink. Again, nothing. Honestly, I couldn't even see much, just rain hitting the deck. No footprints, no shape, no sound beyond the downpour in my own breath. I stood there for a long time, longer than I want to admit, just watching, waiting for, I don't even know what, but just trying to prepare myself for whatever was out there. But nothing happened. No more knocks. Eventually, I went to bed. I didn't sleep well. Every creak of the house made me sit up. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps. The next morning, I remembered something. My parents had one of those garage-mounted security cameras facing the driveway and part of the front porch. Just a basic motion trigger setup. I hadn't thought about it the night before, but I figured it'd be worth checking. So I pulled up the app on my phone. The camera feed loaded, and I scrolled back to around 12:30 a.m. At first, there was nothing. Just more rain. All that rain. The porch light flickering a bit in the wind. A few leaves blowing past the steps. Then, at exactly 12:38, motion alert. The video skips forward, and suddenly, there's someone standing on the porch. Not knocking, not moving, just standing completely still, barely inside the frame, facing the door, arms at their sides, head low. Their shape, blurry from the rain and camera distortion, but definitely there. The clip ran for about 45 seconds, then it ended. The next clip was nearly 10 minutes later. They were still there, same spot, same position. Another 10 minutes, another motion alert, still there. Over 45 minutes of clips, each separated by the motion trigger timer, and not once did the person move. Not an inch, not a raised hand, just standing there in the rain. Until suddenly, they weren't. The last clip shows the porch empty again. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. I never saw a face, never got a call. No one ever showed up on the footage from the backyard. And nothing was stolen, no damage, no message. Just those 3 knocks and the stillness. That's a night I'll never forget. The rain delay. I used to drive for one of those rideshare apps back in 2018, mostly at night. It wasn't my full-time gig or anything. I just did it to pick up extra cash when I couldn't sleep. One night, it started raining hard around 12 a.m. The kind of rain that makes the roads blur, even when your wipers are on max. I almost ended the shift early, but then I got a ping. Decent payout. Pickup only a few blocks away. So I figured, what the hell. The name was weird though. Just the letter D. No rating. Nothing. I figured, whatever. Maybe a tourist using a burner phone. It happens. I pulled up in front of this small corner bodega. Nothing unusual. Dim street lights. Rain bouncing off the sidewalk. The whole street was dead quiet. I tapped the arrived button, and just as I did, the passenger side door opened. This guy gets in, mid-30s maybe, dark hoodie, no umbrella, but weirdly, now that I remember, not wet at all, not even his shoes, not a single drop of water on him, and remember, it was pouring that night. It was the worst I've ever seen. We all say that, but legit, this was the worst storm I've ever been in that wasn't a hurricane. He didn't say much, just confirmed his name. You're here for D, right? I kinda laughed under my breath, but I said yeah, and he gave me an address about 25 minutes away, just past the edge of town, toward the outskirts. But his voice was calm, too calm. As I was driving, I noticed the roads got smaller, the houses further apart. My GPS glitched out once and rerouted us through a side road I'd never driven before. The rain was relentless, No other cars, no street lights, just trees and that quiet hum of wet tires on wet asphalt. He didn't talk at all until we passed under this old, rusted bridge. That's when my check engine light blinked on. Then the car just died. No warning, just sputtered and rolled to a stop under the bridge like it had given up. I turned the key. Nothing. Tried again. Dead. No signal out here, the guy said. No surprise, but the way he said it made me feel like he already knew. I pulled out my phone anyway. Nothing. Not even a single bar. I apologized, trying to keep things chill, but he just stared through the windshield. We sat in silence for what felt like forever. Then he said, "Do you think anyone would come looking for you if you just disappeared out here?" He said it without turning his head toward me. He never looked at me. He was still staring straight ahead. I let out this awkward laugh, like maybe he was joking, but he wasn't smiling. He just sat there. Eventually I said I was going to step out and try restarting the car from the hood. He didn't stop me, but he didn't move either. I popped the hood and stepped out into the rain. Cold, heavy. The rain was pouring sideways. My clothes soaked instantly. I checked what little I knew to check. Battery cables, fluid caps, just going through the motions, hoping to get the hell out of there somehow. When I looked back through the windshield, he was still staring straight ahead. Same position, same expression, still completely dry. I got back in, tried the ignition again, and this time it worked. Just like that, engine roared to life like nothing had happened. He gave me the same address again, and I just drove as fast as I could without crashing. I didn't say a word, neither did he, but I made sure to have one eye on my rear view at all times. Eventually, we got to the drop-off, an old, empty parking lot behind a shuttered factory-looking building. Literally nothing around. No lights, no buildings with signs of life, just weeds and asphalt. He got out, no thank you, no goodbye, just walked toward the back of the lot and disappeared into the darkness. I waited a second, thinking maybe I should call someone, report it, but my phone still had issues with signal. Not until I was back on the main road 10 minutes later that I got full service. That's when I saw something I never noticed before. There was no record of the ride. Not on my trip history, not in my earnings, no passenger name, no pickup address, nothing. It was like it never happened. I checked for days, and even months later, there was nothing. I sent in a report to the company. They said maybe the ride hadn't processed because of the signal loss and the weather that night, but they couldn't find any trip data around that time. Nothing under D. I tried to let it go, told myself it was a system bug, a weird dude, a rainy night with too little sleep. But a week later, I got a text. No number, just a message. Thanks for the ride. That's it. Just those 4 words. And I swear to God, I didn't tell anyone about that night. I don't do rideshare anymore, as I have another side hustle, but it's something I will never forget. The light in the storm drain. I used to work at this small local cafe that closed at 10 p.m. I'd usually walk home, only about 8 blocks, quiet neighborhood. But one night, it rained hard. The kind of relentless, sideways rain that turns everything into a blur. I waited it out in the cafe for a while, but around 10:45, I figured, screw it. I had a hoodie, and I just wanted to get home. Most of the walk was uneventful. Empty sidewalks, puddles everywhere, a couple of passing cars spraying water from the gutters. But as I turned onto the last street before my apartment, I noticed something off. There's a storm drain at the end of the curb near the old Catholic school. Just a standard rectangular grate with rusted bars. Nothing unusual. But this time, as I passed it, I saw light coming from inside. Not reflecting off water or anything. Not from a street lamp. It was glowing. Like a soft, cold white pulse. Faint, but definitely there. I stopped. I crouched down to get a better look, keeping my distance from the edge, and saw nothing. Just the concrete tunnel receding into darkness, but the light kept pulsing from somewhere deep inside. Faint, rhythmic, almost like it was breathing. And then, I swear, I heard something whisper my name. I immediately stood up and looked around. No one was around, just an empty sidewalk and the rain slapping the street. I shook it off, told myself I was imagining things. The drain must have been reflecting light off a passing car or something, and to keep walking. But something was definitely off. I could feel it. I've always had a sense for when something's off. That subtle pressure you get when someone's watching you. I just felt it. I finally got home, soaked and somewhat shaken, and tried to forget about it, but I couldn't get it off my mind. Later that week, I was walking to class and passed the same spot. No light, just a wet curb and a few scattered leaves. I stopped anyway and looked inside. Nothing, but something else on the sidewalk caught my eye. It was a photo. Old, wet, half warped from the rain, but clear enough to recognize. It was me. The picture showed me crouched in front of the drain, exactly how I'd been standing that night. It had been taken from behind, like someone was watching from across the street, or closer. I looked around, heart racing. Who had taken that? How had it ended up by the drain? I brought it home with me, even though I felt sick holding it. I figured I'd show a friend, or maybe the police, even though I knew they'd probably laugh it off. But that night, I heard the whisper again, coming from my bedroom window. I live on the second floor. I didn't look. I stayed still, barely breathing, until it stopped. The next day, I switched up my walk home, took the longer way, avoided that drain entirely, but the feeling didn't go away. It followed me. The sense that something was just barely out of sight, watching. A few nights later, I got a text from an unknown number. No contact name, no message history. It was a photo. I almost dropped my phone. It was me again, standing on the sidewalk, looking into the storm drain. But this time, it was from the inside. The shot had been taken from inside the tunnel, looking out through the grate. I was frozen in the frame, completely still, my head tilted down. The glow of the phone in my hand just barely lighting my face. And just behind me, in the background, there was something standing in the street. A figure, barely visible, blurred by rain and distance, but definitely there. I took a semester off. I changed numbers. I couldn't focus. I couldn't sleep. Eventually, I dropped out completely and went somewhere else. I still have that photo, the physical one. It's buried in a box at my dad's house. I never told him what it was. I avoid storm drains now anytime I see one, especially in the rain.